Hello and welcome back to Mad's Tea Party, the channel run by a girl who does not drink tea. I'm Madison, and today I have a book review video for you guys. The last video I posted on this channel was just basically me saying that I'm going to be moving away from the content that I've been making and try to branch out into some of my other interests on my channel. And one of those interests happens to be reading, writing, anything literary pretty much. And so I thought that I kind of go back to my roots a little and just give a standard book review video. I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in the month of November and giving my general thoughts on each one. And at the very end of the video, I will crown Book of the Month. It's been actually a pretty good year for reading for me. I've read 62 books at the time of this filming this year, which is completely crazy. It shattered my previous record, and I know some people read more than that, but for me, I broke my personal record and I'm happy with that. I read 5 books this month, which is not my highest, but also not my lowest, so you know what, whatever. And my ratings are all over the place. I've got some 5 stars all the way down to 2 stars this month. Crazy. Now, I try not to be too scathing with my reviews of books. I have a book that should hopefully be coming out next year. Stay tuned for details on that. So I know how hard it is to write a book, especially writing a good book. So this is nothing against the authors of these books. In fact, one of the books that I read this month, I've read other books by this author that I loved, and this one just didn't grab me. So it's nothing personal, and I like books in general, so please don't take me too seriously, okay? The first book on my list that I read this month was Emblaze. This is book 3 in the Violet Eden chapters, which was a series that I picked up book 4 several years ago at a bargain bookstore for like $1. And I didn't realize that it was book 4 when I bought it. I thought it was like book 2, and I was like, well, I'll just skip book 1 and just read book 2. But then I found out that I got book 4. So I got onto the best website of all time, thriftbooks.com. God, it saved my life. I got all 4 of the missing books that I had, books 1 through 3 and then book 5, for $20. It was crazy. Thank you, Thrift Books. Anyway, so this is book 3, and I read books 1 and 2 in October. Won't be reviewing books 1 and 2 just because I didn't read them this month. Sorry. I rated this book 4 stars, which is pretty good, but I just feel like books 1 through 3 in the Violet Eden chapters just kind of blend together, especially books 2 and 3. There's not really much to them that's new or like adds to the story at all. I will say the main character is very teenagery. She makes a lot of juvenile mistakes, and like there's a lot of miscommunications that could have just been solved if someone had stuck around for 5 seconds and spoken about it. But that's to be expected. She's a teenager, and honestly, she wasn't the worst main character I've ever read. Also, her love interest is generally not terrible, and I genuinely believe that they really like each other. And also, this is one of those book series that their romance builds over the course of the 5 books instead of just being, oh, they get together in book 1 and then the rest of the 4 books are them then having problems or being separated or something like that. Each book is building to them finally getting together. So it's very slow burn, and I appreciate that. I would definitely recommend this book for anyone who's a fan of like the Mortal Instruments. I don't know why I didn't really like the Mortal Instruments, but it just gave me the same vibe, okay? I can't explain it. Definitely give this one a shot. It's Jessica Shervington is the author, and I have never heard of anyone else reading these books, so please, please, please read them and let me know what you think. The second book that I read in November was Mistress of All Evil by Serena Valentino. I personally did not like this book. I have huge issues with most Disney branded books. I could make a whole video about that, but this series specifically is just very strange. So this is book 4 in the Villains series. I read books 1 and 2 a really long time ago, and then I read books 3 and 4 almost back to back, but book 3 I read in October, so I'm not talking about it in this video. But the reason that I gave this 2 stars is because I feel like Sleeping Beauty is one of those stories that it's so easy to get wrong. And I feel like people misinterpret Maleficent as a character, people misinterpret Aurora as a character, and they also misinterpret the Three Good Fairies. And I feel like this book is just Exhibit A of everything you could do wrong with a Sleeping Beauty retelling. I understand that it's supposed to be the villain's perspective of what's going on in the story, but this book has a weird timeline. You don't understand how long it's been since Aurora's been asleep. In the movie, it's assumed that it's all in one night, but this makes it seem like it's weeks or even months, and it's very strange. And again, nothing against this author, because I read this book in like 2 days. I got through it so quickly because it was just easy to read. I could go on and on about how bad Disney books are, but this is probably my least favorite in the villains book series, just because Sleeping Beauty is one of my favorite movies and I feel like it just didn't do it justice. Book 3 that I read in November was Endless. Once again, back with the Violet Eden chapters. I could make a whole separate video about how much I love this series. It's underrated and it's so good. This book was an easy 5 stars for me. So the first half of this book probably was 4-star material, and I thought that I was gonna give it 4 stars. And then the second half of the book happened and I read it all in one night. I read it so fast. I could not stop. There was a crazy plot twist. My heart got torn out of my chest and I felt something. I don't really feel things when I read anymore, just because I read so quickly and I read so much. And I feel like I have read a lot of books that I didn't really care for as much this year because of the order that I read my books in. These are books that I've had on my shelf for 3+ years. So they're pretty old and my tastes have changed since then. But this book, oh my God, I felt something. And that's an automatic 5 stars for me. Book 4 that I read in the month of November was Empower, which is book 5 in the Violet Eden chapters. That's right, I didn't play my back and forth game like I usually do. Usually I try to break up books by the same author just so I don't get tired of them and I can kind of break up their work a little bit, and it keeps me from getting into reading slumps, but this one I just couldn't. I was gonna continue and then come back to this one next year and I just couldn't. I had to continue. I just realized I didn't explain what the series is about at all, so I guess I'll do that now. Basically, it's about this teenage girl named Violet Eden, and she finds out on her 17th birthday that she has an angel parent that's essentially like a third parent that she gets some angelic powers from, and she has to fight exiled angels, which are like kind of like demons, but not really. It's very confusing, but not really if you've read the book. But I don't want to explain too much. I don't want to give too much away. This was the big finale to the series, book 5, and I loved it. It was the perfect cap to the series. And again, I feel like the first half of this book, coming off of Endless, was so good that I gave it 5 stars, and also the ending was just so good. I can't say it was better than Endless, but I still gave it 5 stars. Also, a fun thing about this book, I got this one from Thrift Books, and I did not realize this, but this is a UK copy, like a UK edition of this book, not an American edition. I did not realize that in the UK, they don't use quotation marks. They just use apostrophes to signal dialogue. So I was reading this book and I was like, wow, that's a lot of typos. And then I looked on the back cover and it says co.uk. The last book that I read this month was And I Darken by Kiersten White. I actually really like Kiersten White as an author. I read her Paranormalcy trilogy a while ago, and to this day, it's one of my favorite books. So I was hoping that this one would be the same kind of thing, just because I know that I like this author, but unfortunately, I didn't really care for this book, and I had to give it 3 stars. I was kind of on the fence of whether or not I wanted to continue with the series, because before I started this book, I knew it was next up in my lineup, and I knew that I liked this author, so I bought the next 2 books in the trilogy, and I returned them after I read this one just because I didn't really care enough to continue. I don't think this book is bad. I just think that its marketing is kind of weird. I got this book because it was marketed as a fantasy, and in fact, it is historical fiction. I did not know this until after I was about 100 pages into this book and realized that this was set in the Ottoman Empire, which is a very real place. So I was very confused, and I had to look up what was going on with this book. And yeah, it's historical fiction, it's not fantasy. And I feel like that's not really what I signed up for, so it kind of frustrated me a little bit. But I will say the main character in this book, Lada, I really like her. She's a very unique heroine, and I would like to see more of her, but unfortunately the other two main characters of the book, Radu and Mehmed, I just didn't like that much. So yeah, I didn't really care where their stories went, unfortunately. So I'm not gonna continue. And also, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. I love a good romance, and I just didn't see the romance in this book going anywhere. That makes me sad, and I don't wanna read things that are gonna make me sad. I want happy endings, dang it. I definitely would recommend this for some people. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So if you like kind of historical fiction that like totes the line of fantasy, but not really, definitely give this a try. It's got a really unique main character, and it's really interesting, like the concept of it at least. It's basically Vlad the Impaler, but if Vlad the Impaler was a woman instead of a man. And I think that that's interesting, and it's a nice concept. I just didn't really care to read an entire trilogy about it when I expected something a bit more fantastical. It's editing Madison. I just realized I promised a book of the month at the end of the video, and I didn't give you one, but I feel like it should have been fairly obvious from the way that I talked about it. Book of the month was Endless, easy, hands down, so yeah. So those were my November reads for this year. If you guys like this video, I really had fun making this, and I would love to do another video like this for my December reads. So please let me know, have you read any of these books? What did you think? And yeah, thank you so much for watching if you've made it to this point, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!